Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Bednarik, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, a loving, spirited, and inclusive community. And while our physical sanctuary is located in Port Townsend, Washington, our online community now extends far beyond the coordinates of the local map. Wherever it is that you happen to be this morning, we are delighted that you're here with us. We begin our service by taking a moment to acknowledge that the water, the land, and the shoreline here in Port Townsend are the traditional territory of the S'Klallam and Chemakum people. We honor and acknowledge our indigenous neighbors, and we vow to help restore and maintain their homelands, the flora, and the fauna. And if you're living in or near Port Townsend, we encourage you to travel the Chichmahan Trail, which will provide you some deeper understanding of the indigenous history of this remarkable place. And also, just wanted to point out that there was a recent article in the Seattle Times about the trail, which included a shout-out to the Native Connections Action Committee or group here at QUUF. We'll put a link to the article in the chat. In a moment, we're going to be lighting our chalice here in the sanctuary, and you are most welcome to light a candle wherever you may be. And now let's bring ourselves fully into this moment with the ringing of the chime. It's good to be together. It's now time to light our congregational chalice. We invite you to light your own chalice or candle at home, following these chalice lighting words. And this Sunday, it's a short Chinese proverb. It is better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. This Sunday is a day that's filled with light. We lit a chalice. We will light candles of renewal with a special attention on the candle of joy. We will also celebrate Hanukkah with the lighting of the menorah. Later on in the service, we will recognize new members who have joined Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. At this time, we light the candle of renewal.
We are entering a time of year where the earth grows colder, the animals begin to hibernate, and the days, as you've noticed, have become continually shorter. We've also come to the time in which we light a new candle each Sunday until Christmas Eve. The flame of each new candle reminds us that something is happening now, but something more is still to come. The light of these candles grows brighter and brighter each Sunday, guiding us towards deeper faith, increased hope, shared joy, and more love. In prior weeks, we lit the candles of faith and hope, and this morning we will light our third candle, the candle of joy. We'll now welcome Isabella and Juliet.
For laughter and friendship, beauty and creativity, for star-filled nights and hot cocoa by the fire, for dance parties and cuddling up with a good book, for all the things we do that are exactly what we most want them to be in that time, in that particular moment. We light this candle for joy.
Thank you, Isabella and Juliet. And now it's time to light our menorah, since in addition to being Advent, this is also, as you know, the season of Hanukkah. I'd like to invite Margaret Schoenfeld to step forward and share our memorial lighting words.
When I was growing up, Hanukkah was about my extended family getting together with all the kids and relatives, lighting the menorah, eating, playing with cousins, and the kids getting presents. Hanukkah is not as important as other holidays in Jewish tradition. However, because it usually occurs near Christmas, it has become more important in this country. Thus, when my grandson was asked in kindergarten what religion his family was, Josh said, "I'm Jewish with a little bit of Christmas." In the story of Hanukkah, in about 165 BCE, the Greek culture was imposed on the Jews. For 3 years, the Jews fought to keep Jerusalem, their temple, and their religion. They won back Jerusalem, their temple, and the freedom to practice their religion. The temple had been desecrated, and there was only 1 day's worth of oil to burn the lamp of the eternal flame. The miracle was that the oil burned for 8 days, which was enough time to get more oil. The 8 candles of the menorah are for the 8 days the oil burned. For me today, the meaning, the symbolism of the 8 candles is about the flame and the light that represents my religion and culture over thousands of years. It is about the flame, the light that is in each of us. And I am reminded to see the light in everyone and connect from that place. It's about the importance of keeping the flame alive individually, as a family, as a congregation, as a people, as a world. There is a quote from Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks that is meaningful to me as a Jew today in our world. Quote, "If we each are free to light our own flame, together we can banish some of the darkness of the world." Hansi. And I'm going to say as she lights the candles, I'm going to say the blessing for these candles, which is in Hebrew. The blessing will be in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav vetzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Shalom.
Thank you very much, Margaret. And now we invite Bo Ogren, our Director of Family Ministry, and he's going to be sharing once again with us the time for all ages.
Good morning, everyone. Following Margaret lighting our menorah, and in line with Joy Sunday, which both Shaggington and myself are dressed up for in red, we wanted to share a story about some of the traditions that go along with Hanukkah and one way that one boy found to make it extra meaningful for his family. This is called Jeremy's Dreidel by Ellie Gelman. Jeremy arrived to the Jewish Community Center on Monday for the dreidel workshop with a wonderful idea. When he entered the classroom, he saw his friends carrying boxes of supplies and looking through books for ideas. "Look at this," David called to Jeremy. "It's a black and white top that turns colors when you spin it. Do you think I could make a dreidel like that?" "Sure you can," said Miriam, the workshop leader. "But before we start, what do you know about dreidels?" Adam spoke first. It's a top we spin on Hanukkah." "And it has 4 Hebrew letters on it," Jeremy added. Nun, Gimel, Hey, and Shin. They stand for Nes Gadol Hayim Sham, a great, miracle happened there? That's right, Marion smiled. Hanukkah celebrates the victory of the small Maccabee army over the huge army of Antiochus. That was a miracle. There was another miracle, said Jacob. When the Maccabees lit the temple menorah, a tiny jar of oil lasted for 8 whole days. That's why we light candles for 8 nights. That's right. And now we are going to make dreidels. What did you bring? Miriam asked. I want to make my dreidels from recycled materials, Abby said. Jacob pulled out an old music box to make a singing dreidel. Matthew used a rubber ball so his dreidel would bounce. What do you need for your dreidel? Miriam asked. Just clay, Jeremy said. Do you want to look through my science book for interesting ideas? David asked. No, thanks, Jeremy replied, as he returned from the supply closet with a lump of clay. I have a great idea already. My dreidel is a surprise. Jeremy began rolling, pounding, and softening the clay. David wondered what kind of surprise someone could make from plain clay. He peeked over Jeremy's shoulder. What's that? He asked, pointing to the carefully molded tiny dots on one side of the dreidel. Jeremy looked up. The dots are called Braille. It's a way of reading for some people who are blind. This grid of dots is none. You read by feeling the dots with your fingers. The dots stand for letters, numbers, and words. Who do you know who's blind? Adam asked Jeremy. It's for my dad, Jeremy answered. When I come over to play, he always says hi and knows who I am right away, David said, surprised. He doesn't look blind. Blind isn't how you look. It's how you see, Jeremy said. And Dad knows all of my friends' voices. He's a really good listener. I'm making this dreidel so that he can join in when we play dreidel. They all loved the idea of playing together. And Jacob suggested, let's make posters inviting people to join us in a game of dreidel at our Hanukkah celebration this weekend. So that Sunday, families gathered at the JCC for the Hanukkah celebration. They enjoyed latkes and jelly donuts made by the cooking class. The drama club put on a play about Judah Maccabee, and the choir sang Hanukkah songs. The dreidel table was busy as people joined in games. Babies pulled the string on Jacob's dreidel to hear the music. Children sat in a circle to spin Abby's recycled dreidel. And Jeremy sat with his father, smiling proudly as kids and grown-ups alike took turns playing with his Braille dreidel. There are so many heartfelt ways that we can make the holidays feel very special, and so many different holidays that all of us celebrate in unique and wonderful ways. I hope we all find a time to make something special for someone else this season.
Thank you very much, Bo. What I'd like to do now is acknowledge and welcome those of you who are visiting us today. If you're a newcomer or you're returning from being away a while, please say hello in the live chat section. That's on the right side of your screen. We'd love to know your name and where you're from so we can get to know you better. As you know, there's a lot happening always at QUUF. If you haven't yet done so, please check out our website at QUUF.org for a whole host of free online classes, events, and groups. We also hope that you'll consider joining us for our coffee hour afterwards and some conversation. Look for the link that will be posted in the comments section at the end of the service. And lastly, if you find this service useful or inspirational, hopefully both, we hope that you'll share the link with your friends and family. We have a lot of people from outside of our congregation that are listening to us, especially those that don't have this service in their own churches. So welcome, everyone. We're glad that you're with us today. And now, it's time for our offering. Today, our offering will go to the minister's discretionary fund, which is a fund that Kate draws from to help members facing minor emergencies, things like groceries and utilities they can't pay, or even hearing aids and housing deposits and many matters like this. So if you'd like to make a donation to this worthy cause, you have 3 options. First, you can text the amount you'd like to give to the number now showing at the bottom of your screen. Text the amount you'd like to give. Or you can go to quuf.org and click on the word giving. Or you can mail a check to us at QUUF. We will now gratefully receive your offering as we listen to the Minuette and Trio by Franz Schubert. Of announcements that I would like to share with you this morning. First of all, I want to make sure that you saw the e-blast that went out this week. It's about our winter holiday gift bags. It's pretty exciting. So if you did not receive it, and at my meeting yesterday, people said they hadn't, but I wonder maybe if they just hadn't gotten to reading it. But if you didn't receive it, please contact the office. That's administrator@quuf.org. And secondly, I want to remind you again that we need photos of you and your loved ones. And what we need it for is the lighting of candles for our special Christmas Eve slideshow. And so you're welcome to submit your photos or very short videos to selfie@quuf.org or by this Friday. And the video should be 7 seconds or less. That's really short. So please do that as soon as you're able. And now it is time for our new member recognition ceremony. Kate?
Good morning, everyone. I'm coming to you from my home today because I recently went out of state to visit my terminally ill mother, and I'm still finishing out those last days of my quarantine. I want you to know that we have the privilege today of receiving a number of new members into our fellowship. They are among the people who took our recent new member orientation classes and decided to join this community in a more official capacity. Now, we have modified this new member recognition to adapt to our new online reality. So the book signing, for example, will not take place in the sanctuary because there'd be too many people. I'll be seeing folks one-on-one in my office after this quarantine. And when Mary Taberski reads the bios on each member, you'll see their photo instead of actual footage of them at our pulpit. Still, our joy at welcoming our newest members is immense, for clearly we need each other and this community now more than ever. So, without further ado, and on behalf of our governing board and this entire fellowship, I want to welcome our new members today. It is my hope that your experience at QUF will be inspiring and transformative, both for you and our congregation. For our congregation, you may recall, is not based on a common creed, but on a common covenant, a way of being with each other in a loving, supportive, and cooperative fashion. As such, we will do our best to be a source of strength, compassion, and growth for you, and ask that you, too, become a source of strength, compassion, and growth for others. For it is in lifting each other up and working collectively that we make this a vibrant and life-changing community. So what I'd like to do now is invite Mary Taberski, who's a member of our membership committee, to introduce our new members to our congregation.
I'm so happy to be able to introduce to you 7 new members to our QUUF community. Amy Hepburn. Amy tells us, I grew up in Massachusetts and Northern California, making my way to Seattle in the late 1970s. I have worked as a cook, caterer, a community organizer, and for the last 30 years, a child and family therapist and an elementary school counselor. I retired to Port Townsend this past summer, joining a dear QUUF friend. I'm new to UU, and I'm happy to be part of the Anti-Racist Action Group at QUUF. I was drawn to this effort after many years as a union activist and anti-racist educator, with plenty still to learn. I welcome the opportunity to share talents, interest, fun, and a commitment to peace and justice at QUUF. Aileen Glom. She says, in the early 80s, I moved to Florida from Wisconsin to attend massage school. Finding the UUs was a breath of sweet air in a community with a preponderance for antique thinking. In '87, I moved to Boulder, Colorado, where I met John at the UU church where we were married. As peace pieces, we performed poetry, stories, and music on international adventures. After retirement, we moved to Nelson, British Columbia for 8 years. There I studied peace studies and fiber arts at Selkirk College. In 2020, we moved to Port Townsend, where the mantle of the Salish Sea holds the land for this moment in time, and the hearts of we who walk it greet the other with recognition of kinship. John Glam. John has been a Unitarian Universalist since 1963, when he was invited to play at All Souls Unitarian in Washington, D.C. This was the time of the March on Washington, led by the Reverend Martin Luther King, and All Souls was provided the basement to shelter many of the out-of-town marchers. To his amazement, the congregation was mixed racially, so he had to explore what Unitarianism was about. Being an emeritus professor in ethnomusicology from the University of Colorado in Boulder and a professional musician, he has performed many times at Unitarian churches and fellowships. In Nelson, British Columbia, he and his wife started the Nelson Unitarian Spiritual Center. They look forward to contributing to our music and stories at Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Linda and David Lubinsky. Linda and David have been part-time residents of Port Townsend from 2007 to 2018, when they made it full-time and permanent. Linda retired from her career in oncology nursing in 2018, while David inches closer to retiring in 2021 from a career in international development. They've been married for almost 44 years and have 2 daughters and 4 grandsons who live in Port Angeles and Tacoma. Their UU journey began in 1995 in Dallas, Texas, which led to membership in East Shore Unitarian in Bellevue, Washington, and now QUUF. They're looking forward to continuing their UU journey and getting more involved in meeting people who are committed to making our community and world a better place for children and grandchildren everywhere. Mary Jean Ewing. Mary Jean says, I'm the second of 3 daughters born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, by parents who were educators. With educators' schedules, we had many opportunities for camping and traveling. We were also active members of the Downtown Unitarian and later UU Church of Our Father. My sisters and I were very active in church school and liberal religious youth group. I continued my involvement as an officer of the National LRY group, closing that chapter of my life after attending a conference in Switzerland before I took my junior year in Freiburg, Germany, where I met my husband. My activism started early with organizing a Smokey the Bear Club with school friends. Of course, the activism continued as members of a UU congregation and LRY. My social work degree from Wayne State also set my course. Although after marrying Peter, I used my education predominantly in the volunteer world as I raised my 2 children. Peter and I were in Colorado for 50-plus years and have only recently moved to Port Townsend. Both of our children have settled in Washington State and are the reason for our change of residence. We look forward to becoming more engaged in our community and to joining QUUF and meeting this UU community. Peter Ewing. Peter says, I was born and raised in a small western Massachusetts town, and in my early years went to the Congregational church. It was your classic white-clappered New England church where we spent more time running around all the secret passages than paying attention to Sunday school. As a teenager, my mother took us to the Northampton Unitarian Universalist Church, and I felt more at home there. But church was not an important part of my life until much later. My parents were both teachers, and they offered us kids a much broader exposure to the world with special experiences, including, for me, a year as an exchange student in Austria. This experience opened my eyes to looking at life in many different ways rather than the narrow outlook of a small New England village. I met my wife in Germany during the year Kennedy was assassinated. Mary Jean has been raised in the UU faith, and with children, we began to attend the UU Church of Boulder. I began attending more regularly when I felt the need to show our daughter that the UU approach to life was important to me and our family. With time, I've become more comfortable with the UU experience, although I would say I don't feel greatly in need of faith. I marvel at the wonders of the universe and man's quest to understand. I feel our time here is an opportunity to create heaven on earth through concern for all, than to wait for it after we've gone. I guess I'm a humanist.
And now, congregation, please join me in these welcoming words there at the bottom of your screen. It is our pledge to these new members. We, the Congregation of Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, gladly receive you into our community. Let us join together in working towards a deeper understanding of one another and upholding our covenant to love, to share, and to serve. Thank you, everyone. We will now hear the joys and sorrows of this congregation.
Thank you, and thank you very much, new members. And also, thank you, Kristin and Helen. And it's now time for our joys and sorrows. As always, we begin this ritual with the recognition that our personal joys and sorrows are really only a fragment of the joys and sorrows of the larger community of life. So we have just a couple of those. So first, we're going to place this stone in honor of those thousands of volunteers, public servants, and elected officials throughout the country who have continued to uphold our democratic norms, really, support the rule of law, and who have worked and continue to work to make the recent election free and fair. And secondly, we're going to place a second stone for the first dose of vaccine from Pfizer that was given to the 90-year-old woman in Great Britain. What a wonderful first start for the West. And now, within our own congregation. So the first joy I'm going to bring up is this, which I think a lot of you can see. It's the heart that was in every one of your Thanksgiving bags. And I just want everybody to bring it out once again and to remember that Deb Carroll made 400 of these for us. And now we light a candle to celebrate the joy that member Alice King has, a brand new granddaughter, and her name is Winifred Grace King. Alice and David went to Los Angeles to try to safely help their older brother Finn, their son Jamie, and their daughter-in-law Kendra with a new arrival. All are doing well in this complicated world, and we light a candle for them. And we light 2 candles to celebrate the birthdays this week of Jennifer Taylor and Celeste Archambault. And maybe some of you had a birthday as well, and you're welcome to light a candle. And Kristin Asta has asked that we share that we light a candle for her brother-in-law, Steve Parnas, who's married to her sister Barbara. Steve is a COVID patient in Atlanta, and he's on a respirator and very ill right now. He's in his mid-70s. Please send Steve and family healing light. Thus, we light the candle of healing for Steve and his family. And now, we place the final stone, holding in our hearts the joys and sorrows that have been called here today, but also thinking of such joys and sorrows among us that are unexpressed, but no less important. And I think there are a lot of them in this congregation right now. So we place a stone to hold each of you in our hearts. May we have a heart of compassion for those in pain and sorrow, and a heart that rejoices with those who rejoice. I invite you now into a moment of silence, which will be followed by a musical response performed by Helen, Lauritzen.
The reading this morning are a few short sentences from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. Our goal should be to live life in radical amazement. Get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. The special music this morning is Allegro Vivace from Sonatina in D major by Franz Schubert, performed by Kristin and Helen. Thank you, Helen and Kristin. Special music, always special. There is a wonderful quote by the great feminist, anarchist, and atheist Emma Goldman. It goes like this: "If I can't dance to it, it's not my revolution." And while I generally try to avoid using double negatives to make a positive point, I must admit that Emma Goldman's statement reminds me of a great bumper sticker: "Don't postpone joy." On this Sunday, when we celebrate the light from the candle of joy, I want to suggest, I actually want to assert, that our birthright as conscious beings on this glorious planet is a living, breathing, ecstatic joy. And that the fundamental reality of religious practice should be deeply nutritive joy. And if it isn't, we should pull the cord on whatever religious bus we are on and get off at the next stop. Life is simply too short to be riding a joyless bus. So we bravely pull that cord, and there's that notable ding, ding, and then the stop requested sign illuminates, and the bus slows down, pulls over, and there's this hush as you make your way toward the front of the bus to the door. It's dark outside, and you've decided to risk a vibrant darkness somewhere rather than merely exist inside a joyless here. You hear that the door opening, and you step off. You exit joylessness, and the door closes behind you. And the bus drives away. And every window frames a face, a stern face, staring at you in the darkness, trying to make out who on earth you are to take such risks. It is dark. You are alone. The night is yours. The night, rich with time, is yours. And think of that you're alive on the dark side of a beautiful planet revolving, and you trust, you actually know that light is coming. What good fortune you have. The red taillights of that joyless bus grow ever smaller until they are undetectable along the horizon. The silence becomes richly textured, punctuated by the sounds of critters and creatures, crickets and frogs. The air, it's fresh and easy to breathe. And as your eyes adjust to the darkness, the sky becomes dappled with constellations and the Milky Way. What do you believe with your one heart beating in its one direction within this night of starlight and song? Where do you locate yourself in the vastness of the universe? These are fundamental religious questions for you to consider. And I'd like to believe that from that long night that you answered the question by finding your way here, locating yourself within this sanctuary where a religious community gathers to ritually light candles of faith, hope, love, and joy, and Hanukkah within huge darkness. And while the darkness is huge and the light is delicate, I'm reminded of that brilliant Scottish cheer that a friend taught me years and years ago when we raised our wine glasses, and he said, with great cheer, "You're a long time dead." One possible translation of "you're a long time dead" is, "Don't postpone joy." And when the wine touched my lips after that cheer, my lips touched the ritual drink of Dionysus, one of the most powerful and unique Greek gods. As Jungian analyst Robert Johnson writes in his book, Ecstasy, Understanding the Psychology of Joy, quote, "Dionysus is a complex figure who symbolizes the irrational world of the senses as it interacts with the irrational world of rules and limitations. the God of wine and ecstasy, liberation and abandon. He is the perennial profusion of color and life and energy. When we touch Dionysus, we touch the irrational wisdom of the senses and experience joy. Now, I, for one, am very interested in ecstasy and liberation and joy, and I ask the question with all my heart, is Dionysus and divine ecstasy welcome within Unitarian Universalism? I think that divine ecstasy does not come naturally or easy to UUs. We are top-heavy to a fault, busy with our hands trying to fix real-world problems, hard problems to fix. And I got to say, we would do well to occasionally dance up a revolution or create and embrace the meaningful ritual where we could surrender to the non-rational. Again, to quote Robert Johnson, surrender, even to the divine, is something our culture does not encourage. Surrender to the divine means crossing over from our well-defined roles and worlds into the realms of the gods, where everything is possible and nothing is explained. Now, I love that phrase, where everything is possible and nothing is explained. I've got a writer friend who went to Vietnam as a conscientious objector during the war, and his humanitarian service there was to help war-injured children. And his years of service, it affected him deeply. When he got back to the U.S., he began searching for his place in the world and spent considerable amount of time hitchhiking around this country. In the Southwest, he found himself engaged in a Native American peyote ritual, which he describes beautifully in this prose piece that I'd like to read you. It's called The Gift of Morning Water by John Balaban. After the long nights with a cold wind riffling the scrim of the teepee like a lantern in a deserted prairie, a night of chills in the small of the back, aches in the crossed legs. After all the hours of chanting from Indians and Anglos, after their drumming on an iron kettle stretched with hide, with water-filled belly bellowing when tipped, after the prayers sung for forgiveness, for guidance from the grandfather peyote on this crescent of sand, after chewing bitter buttons, swallowing dry powder, after the drumming and the singing and the sweet sage thrown on the dazzling fire, as the embers died and dawn finally rinsed the top of the tent, the road chief, an elderly Tiwa, who throughout the night had asked him to show us the right road, said, "A woman is coming with morning water. Listen to her. She is your mother." An old Pueblo woman crawled through the tent flap, short of breath, and shoving before her on the teepee sand a steel bucket, water sloshing, ladle clanking. I turned with exhaustion, with disappointment, for all night long I had sat eating the medicine, going out only once under the huge roaring stars to take a leak and return, and nothing really had happened. And then she spoke with puffy, tired lips and said, "You have done a good thing here tonight. Drink this water and be refreshed." And every syllable that came from her was perfectly the voice of my own mother, dead many years. Stunned and now weeping, I sat as the bucket came around to me, wept hard at hearing her voice again. And Balaban continues, "I have a friend in Vermont who, for a full week after his father's death, kept calling the family answering machine just to hold a bit longer to his father's voice. And here I was made a gift I hadn't known how much I wanted. The voice that called my name on the first morning of my life." Now, I love that story for so many reasons. The ritual use of a powerful plant called medicine, the drumming, the mixing of Anglos and Indians, the dazzling fire, the singing, the sage, roaring stars, bodily aches, the needed water, the rational disappointment that, quote, nothing really had happened, and then the mystical gift of the mother's voice, the hard weeping at dawn, the hard weeping that drills beyond reason and taps deep, deep wells of emotion. Now, I carry this story with me as a classic example of divine ecstasy, and I know that my friend treasures the experience. So what is ecstasy? In preparation for this sermon on joy, I had the great fortune of asking this very question to one of my former professors, a philosopher and classicist. He's in his 80s. He is plagued by shingles, and as a result of the pain, he has become addicted to pain medication. I went to visit him and visit his wife for Sabbath dinner. And so over gefilte fish and cold noodles, I took the opportunity to ask, so what is your understanding of ecstasy? Now, there's nothing quite like asking a philosopher a question about words and definitions and understanding. Within moments, a massive reference book appeared at the table, confirming that the ancient word in Greek, ecstasis, means to stand outside oneself, which can be taken to mean when our chattering, ever-managing egos dissolve for a moment and we are beyond time and space. It was Sabbath dinner, and on the table was a bowl of bright red cherries. I took one, tossed it in my mouth, and gave it a quick chew. What are you doing? My professor asked. You don't just pop them into your mouth. And then he took a cherry by the stem and very slowly, and I mean very slowly, brought it towards his mouth. It looked something like this. Here is a big-brained man in his 80s, hunched and suffering from shingles, who reads Aristotle and Plato in the original Greek, showing me exactly how to become ecstatic in the real world with something as mundane as a cherry, or rather, something as miraculous as a cherry. Slowly, the bright red cherry travels through space toward him. His mouth opens, his eyes close. He concentrates his attention and deliberately chews, moaning audibly, joyfully tasting, actually tasting the cherry, tasting the miracle of the cherry. Paying attention enough to the world to taste the sweet fruits of the world, of this world, the world that he's deeply engaging with his senses. He opened his eyes, he smiled, gave a little nod, looked me in the eyes. Ecstasy. And then his wife admitted that he will occasionally weep at the taste of good food. And consider again our reading this morning from Rabbi Heschel. Quote, our goal should be to live life in radical amazement. Get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. To be spiritual is to be amazed. And so we loop back to the question at hand. Is Dionysus, is divine ecstasy welcome within Unitarian Universalism? Unlike most denominations with Christian roots, UUs do not partake in the Eucharist, for example, which has a taproot in Dionysian rituals with the use of wine and the miraculous transformations. Now, truth be told, my brain killed that ritual, and like so many moderns, I've turned away from the Eucharist because it made zero rational sense, though it makes perfect ecstatic sense. And during the past few years, as I've become more deeply involved in Unitarian Universalist worship services, I have felt personally a deep longing for rituals that open into divine, non-rational, truly joyful space where I may be aided in living a life of radical amazement. Now, in our religion, the richest territory for ritual entrance is likely the generous divine love that is the hallmark and the namesake of universalism. And to call upon the anarchist and atheist Emma Goldman again, one of her great quotes, "Love, the strongest and deepest element in all life, the harbinger of hope, of joy, of ecstasy. Love, the defier of all laws, of all conventions. Love, the freest, the most powerful molder of human destiny." And so with a deep bow to love, to Dionysus, to my suffering philosophy professor, and his shining example of attention and ecstasy, this morning I propose a new UU ritual, and let's call it Fruits of Attention. On this Sunday morning of joy, you are welcome to try this at home in your home sanctuary with any fruit or vegetable that might be available. Here in this sanctuary, we'll continue the Dionysus theme with these miraculous grapes. The mythological grape, fruit of the earth, that symbolizes the interconnected web of all existence of which we are a part. These grapes, they're made of rain clouds and sunshine, blossoms and bees. They're the source of inspirational wines. They were harvested with the intention to nourish and to delight. With great affection, with possibilities before us, we gently hold this grape and marvel at its deep and subtle colorations. The delicate light of itself giving over to the delicate light of our lives. So see the grape as you've never seen a grape before. You're inviting yourself to be radically amazed. The grape, this actual grape, contains many astounding miracles of this world. And now, slowly bring the fruit to your mouth, and when you taste the sweetness flash on your tongue, relish the effervescence of your own life and the lives of those joining you virtually all over the country. Now, centuries of people before you have had their lives blessed by the sweet miracles of grapes. May centuries of people after you have their lives blessed by the sweet miracles of grace. May we all, living in the now, between untold centuries, be moved to say aloud in joy-filled amazement, ecstasy. Amen.
Please join me in singing Joy Thou Goddess, hymn number 327.
Joy, thou goddess fair, immortal, offspring of Elysium, mad with rapture laws indeed may sever, but thy magic joins again. Humankind is one forever, 'neath thy mild and gentle reign. Joy in nature's wide dominion, mightiest cause of all is found, and 'tis joy that moves opinion when the wheel of time goes round. From the bud she lures the flower, suns from out their orbs of light. Distant spheres obey her power, far beyond all mortal sight.
And now's the time when we extinguish the chalice with these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we're together again. Thank you for everyone for joining us today. I invite you to join us for our virtual coffee hour, the link for which is now going to be in the chat section on the screen. And in close, let's turn our attention to Nan Toby Tyrell, and she plays the Postlude with a medley from Fiddler on the Roof. Thanks.